I wasn't supposed to be there that day. My flight back to Edinburgh had been cancelled, some fog thing. They said at Heathrow, the kind of grey British morning where the sky just gives up. So I had 6 hours to kill in London, and I did what everyone does when they're lost in London with nowhere to be. I walked to the palace. Not because I'm one of those royal watchers with a Union Jack tote bag and a telephoto lens. I'm not. I just needed somewhere to stand still, somewhere that felt, I don't know, solid. And Buckingham Palace has that quality. Even if you think the whole institution is absurd, the building doesn't move. It just sits there, holding the weight of everything, pretending nothing has ever rattled it. It was a Tuesday, around 9:30 in the morning. The tourists were thin, not the summer shoulder-to-shoulder crush, just scattered clusters. A family with a pushchair. 2 Korean students photographing each other in front of the gates. An old man in a barber jacket who looked like he came every day, standing slightly apart from everyone else, hand behind his back. The guards were at their posts. You know the ones. The foot guards in the tunics and bearskins standing at those wooden sentry boxes like they've been bolted to the earth. They don't blink at you. They don't flinch when tourists inch too close for selfies, or when children wave at them like they're exotic animals behind glass. They just hold. Whatever's happening inside them, hunger, cold, boredom, a bad night, none of it surfaces. That's the job. That's the whole point of them. I've been standing there maybe 20 minutes, drinking a flat white from a paper cup that had gone lukewarm, watching nothing in particular. Then I noticed one of them move. Not a march, not the mechanical pivot and stamp of the changing ceremony. Something different. One of the guards, the one posted to the left of the main gate, had turned his head. Just slightly. Less than an inch, maybe. But enough. I almost missed it. The woman beside me didn't notice at all. She was busy arguing with her phone's camera settings. But I'd been watching. I had nothing else to do. And something about that micro-movement made the back of my neck tighten. Because these men don't move their heads. An aide, a palace official, I assumed from the way he walked, that clipped bureaucratic stride that says I have clearance, and you don't, had approached the guard post from the side entrance. Not the public side, the inner gate. He was carrying a folder. Leather-bound, dark brown, the kind that says whatever's inside it didn't come from a printer in a normal office. They exchanged something. I couldn't hear it. I was too far. But I watched the guard's jaw shift. Not dramatically. The way a jaw shifts when someone is concentrating very hard on not reacting to something that deserves a reaction. The aide left the way he came. Fussed. The guard went back to stillness. But it wasn't the same stillness as before. I know how that sounds. I know I'm a stranger reading too much into the micro-expressions of a man I've never met, standing outside a building I'll never enter. But I've worked 20 years in hospital administration. Reading people who are trying not to show you something is basically my entire skill set. And what I saw in that guard's face, for the 3 seconds before he locked it back down, was not nothing. It was the face of a man who had just been handed information that he did not want. The Korean students packed up their selfie sticks. The pushchair family moved toward St. James's Park. The old man in the barber jacket finally left, unhurrying. I stayed. I don't know why exactly. Instinct, maybe, or just the fog delay and the lukewarm coffee and the particular restless energy of a person who has nowhere to be and suddenly suspect they're standing next to somewhere they should stay. 40 minutes passed. Then, 3 black cars came around the corner from the mall. Not unusual. Vehicles enter and exit the palace grounds constantly. But these ones stopped just short of the gate and stayed stopped, engines idling for longer than protocol seemed to require. I watched a man get out of the middle car. Dark suit, no tie, the uncomfortable posture of someone who had dressed for a meeting they hadn't expected to be summoned to. He walked toward the side entrance. The guard who had received the folder watched him pass. This time, the guard's face showed absolutely nothing, which, after what I'd seen before, felt like the loudest thing in the world that here's what I know, and here's what I was told later, and I'll be straight with you about which is which. What I know, I was outside. I saw arrivals, departures, the careful face of a man trained to feel nothing who was feeling something. That's all I directly witnessed. The rest came to me in pieces over the days that followed, from a friend who works in the kind of adjacent to palace circles where information doesn't get confirmed so much as it gets not denied. She rang me Thursday evening. I was back in Edinburgh by then, the fog having finally shifted. She said, "You were there Tuesday morning, weren't you?" I said yes. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "It was a bad morning inside." What she told me, carefully, in the way people speak when they're choosing each word like they're stepping on ice, was this: there had been a meeting, the kind of meeting that doesn't appear in official diaries. The kind convened not because someone wanted to sit down, but because someone had decided that not sitting down was no longer an option. The issue, as she described it, was not new. It had been building for months in the way institutional pressures build, slowly, through channels, through memos that get softer each time they're reworded, through concerns raised, and then gently shelved, and then raised again, harder this time, by people with more weight behind their names. The concern was about proximity. Specifically, the proximity of certain members of Camilla's family, her connections, her circle, the people who move through doors that ordinary people don't get close to the functioning of the palace. Not a scandal, not a crime, something more textured and more difficult than that. The kind of thing that is impossible to explain in a headline, but that people inside institutions understand immediately, the way you understand when a load-bearing wall has developed a hairline crack that isn't structural yet, but will be. The guard corps, and this is the part my friend said with the most careful voice, had formally escalated. Not through the press, not through any public channel. Internally, the way institutions that still believe in their own dignity handle things they'd rather not handle at all. A formal document, a request, specific language about the integrity of the protective function, and the conditions required to maintain it. The word she used was demand. I said, "That's a strong word." She said, "Yes, it is. That's why the meeting happened." What I keep thinking about is Charles. I've never met the man. I have no particular feelings about the monarchy either way. I'm one of those exhausted moderates who finds the whole thing simultaneously too important and too silly to have a firm opinion on. But my friend, who has been in rooms adjacent to rooms he has been in, said something that has stayed with me. She said he wept, not in front of the delegation, not in the meeting itself. After, in a smaller room, with fewer people, in the way that kings apparently cry when they're not being watched, which is to say, quietly, and with the particular exhaustion of someone who has been carrying something for a very long time, and has just been told they must set it down. I don't know what that feels like. I'm not sure I can imagine it. On one side, the woman you love, the one you waited decades for, the one the world made you feel guilty about before it eventually, grudgingly, let you have. On the other side, the institution, the duty, the men standing in the cold outside your windows who've signed something, their whole life, essentially, to that same institution, who are telling you, in the polished language of formal requests, that something has to change. The folder, the leather-bound folder the aide had brought to the guard that Tuesday morning. My friend didn't confirm what was in it, but she did not confirm it either. I think of that guard's jaw, that micro-shift, that 3 seconds of something passing across a face trained to show nothing. He'd known what he was carrying. There's a version of this story that gets told as a political drama. Factions and memos and institutional power plays. That version is accurate, but it misses something. The version I keep returning to is smaller. A man in his 70s, in a room somewhere inside that building I was standing outside, having just been told that the life he built, the private life, the one that cost him more publicly than most people pay for anything, is now a formal concern. A structural issue, a problem to be managed. And somewhere outside, in the cold, on the gravel, a guard stands perfectly still. Both of them, in their completely different ways, holding something they cannot put down. The fog had come back in by the time the black cars left. I watched them go down the mall until they disappeared. Then, I threw my cold cup in a bin and went to find somewhere that served a proper breakfast. Some things you witness and can't do anything with. You just carry them to, and why grandmother used to say that the truest things in a country are not what the newspapers say happen, but what the people standing nearby remember feeling. She was a nurse for 38 years. She had a gift for being in rooms when things shifted. I think of her often when I think about Tuesday. I went back. Not that same day. That same day, I took the train north and sat with my knees pressed against the seat in front of me and stared out the window at England unreeling backwards. But the following week, when I had a real reason to be in London, I walked to the palace again. Different weather. The fog had given way to one of those thin March days where the light is bright, but delivers no warmth, where everything is sharp and slightly cruel-looking. Different tourists, different clusters, same posts, same guards, same immovable quality to the whole thing. But I looked more carefully this time, because I've been thinking all week about what it costs to do that job, to stand at a post and feel nothing that shows, to receive a leather-bound folder from a fast-walking aide and not let what's inside it travel to your face, to be the physical symbol of an institution's integrity out there in the cold in a bearskin hat, while somewhere behind you the institution itself is sitting in a room trying to figure out what integrity actually requires of it. There's a specific kind of loyalty that asks you to hold both things, the man you serve and the role you serve. When those two things align, the job is straightforward. When they fracture, even slightly, even in the textured, complicated way my friend described, the person who feels it most acutely isn't the king in the room. It's the guard at the gate, the one who can't leave, the one whose entire visible function is to project certainty. I stood there for a while, watching the left post. Different guard from last Tuesday, obviously. I had no way of knowing which rotation, which regiment, which individual. But the post was the same. The sentry box, the rifle, the absolute stillness. At some point, a small boy, 4, maybe 5, red coat, the kind of round, determined face that small boys have when they've decided something matters, marched up to the barrier and stood at attention, imitating the guard with total seriousness. Heels together, chin up, arms rigid. His mother was filming it, laughing softly. The guard did not react, but something, I swear this is true, something in the set of his shoulders changed. Just a fraction, like a held breath, releasing 1%. The boy held his pose for a full 30 seconds. Then he lost his balance, stumbled, grabbed the barrier, and laughed at himself. His mother scooped him up and carried him away. The guard returned to full stillness. That's the thing about these men that I don't think gets said enough. The stillness isn't absence. It isn't emptiness. It's everything compressed. All the things they've seen and heard and been handed, compressed into a posture that says I am still here. Nothing has moved me. The institution stands, even on the mornings when it's shaking. I'm not a royalist. I'm not an anti-monarchist. I'm a middle-aged woman from Edinburgh who got fog-delayed and ended up standing outside a famous building on a Tuesday morning watching a jaw shift 3 millimeters. But here's what I believe happened, pieced together from what I saw and what I was told and what I know about institutions and the people who give their bodies to them. A king received a document that asked him to choose between his private life and his public duty. Not a dramatic ultimatum. Not the stuff of Netflix. Something quieter and harder than that. The kind of institutional pressure that wears the polite language of formal requests while carrying the full weight of consequence. He wept. The way people weep when they have fought very hard for something and build a life inside it, and then are told the life now has conditions. The guards at the gate held their posts, and the palace, that enormous, absurd, load-bearing symbol of a country's idea of itself, sat on its foundations and pretended, as it always has, that nothing inside it was shifting at all. My grandmother would have understood this completely. She used to say that the people who keep things standing, the nurses, the guards, the ones who show up and hold the line even when no one is watching and nothing is rewarded, those people never make the headlines. They're just there, in the cold, carrying what they were given, making sure the thing behind them doesn't fall. I think about that guard sometimes, at night, in the particular way you think about strangers who have accidentally shown you something true. I don't know his name. I'll never know his name. He was doing his job. But for 3 seconds, he was also just a man who'd been handed something heavy. And he carried it. That's the whole story, really. That's all of it.